Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Seekers Finders, interviews with ordinary people about their spiritual path and journey and unfolding. And I'll be talking about three topics with Sujati Gurnitz. Hi, Sujati, welcome.
Hi, Grace. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Sujati is a friend and massage therapist and psychotherapist and counselor and
Well, I have to interrupt you.
Sorry.
I'm not a psychotherapist.
Oh, no, she's not a psychotherapist. Okay. Counselor and coach. And so we'll be addressing three things. One is how Sujati's seeking path has been unfolding and where it's taken her. The second is what has she found? And the third one is how her healing journey intersects with her spiritual journey. So let's start with the basics, a rough kind of outline of your spiritual journey, Sujati.
Well, I'd say my spiritual journey started really early when I was a teenager. I was very curious about anything that had to do with getting to know why we are here, what is this life for. There were all these questions, so I was reading all kind of books. I was going to the library and going to the adult section and getting books, and the woman on the counter said, what are you doing with these books? Like, I'm reading them. So it started pretty early, and it actually had a really big shift when I started reading Osho. And I went to India to see Osho. At that moment, he was still alive in his body. And there I really saw that this is somebody who can show me the way. And that was very, very touching. Especially the aspect that was touching the most was really the knowing that I was loved as I am. And that I could feel through this person, even though I never met him personally, never one-to-one, but I did feel this love that was coming from him. And that was really transformational for me. And then later on, he left his body, and I was feeling pretty lost for quite some time. And I was going more into my healing, of my psychological healing, and into therapy and all kind of stuff like that. And then I got across another master. And I came across this master who's called Muji, and I really was so happy to have found somebody else who I feel is awakened to the truth and who can and is leading all the people who want, all the beings that come there, that listen to him. He's just there for us, and that is again very, very touching, because there's nobody left out. It's not an exclusive club. It is really an inclusive, everybody's welcome to just follow the pointings. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Let me ask you something between those two. I mean, it's interesting because you really chose two gurus, or they chose you. Between those two, are you aware of looking for something different now than you were looking for with Osho, or do you feel it's still the same?
Very good question. When I was meeting Osho, obviously I was very young, and I was completely in a different state. I mean, with all my life before me, with all the things to discover, with all this new stuff to see, it was really exciting. And also Osho as a personality was very exciting. Everything goes. So it was a very expansive and very explorative way of spirituality. And when I met Muji's a completely different personality than Osho. So he is much more one way, and this is just this and this and this and this. And I saw for myself, I felt very humbled by seeing that this kind of, it's like drilling to get water in a well, deeper and deeper and deeper, and it felt like much more mature for me. So in a way, I started to think Osho was very superficial. And at the same time, when I listen to Osho again now, I'm like, he's saying the same thing. I just didn't hear it. It's just because, I mean, for sure, 30 years ago, I didn't have the same understanding of all what's happening and all spirituality and stuff. I mean, it's normal.
So would it be fair to say that actually your understanding was more superficial?
Definitely. I mean, I think it is normal also when you're younger, there is a kind of a maturing that has to happen, and that is not very often in very young people. It does happen. I mean, there are very many examples also for beings that wake up when they're very young. But in general, I would think that young people have this thing about we know everything better and it's our world and yay we go, and then at a certain moment in your life you're like, oh, I actually don't know that much. Even though you know so much more than when you were young. But there's a kind of humility that comes with seeing more. Like Socrates, no, I know that I don't know anything.
You know, Sujati, something that interests me about your being with these two teachers is that, and that kind of goes into the third topic, you know, the healing and the spiritual journey. One way that the two teachings are very different is that with Osho, you know, therapy and body work and everything was part, it was all included. It was all part of what was offered. And somehow it was part of that teaching. Whereas with
I don't,
Muji,
can I interrupt you? I don't think it is part of the teaching. I think it is more of part of the net that Osho was throwing out to catch as many fish as possible, not in a negative sense, not like wanting to use people, but more like when you show that this is available and this, then there are many, many options to draw people to you. And in a way, I think Osho was just really about wanting to reach the most people possible. And that was before internet also. So, I mean, it's a very different reality than nowadays when you just need to do some YouTubes and millions of people can see you.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't feel it was part of his teaching that all of all of the human being could be freed, you know, not just there's not just the ultimate truth, but there's also all these relative truths that can expand and be included.
Interesting.
I know it's a funny question, and it's asked obviously on the background of Muji's teaching, who's very clear that, you know, he's only interested in truth, and that's what he's teaching, absolute truth. So
I'd say with Osho, it was that he would just allow whatever the people that came to him offered to be there. And he would give them a free card to do whatever they wanted to do with it. And for him, it was all about enlightenment, but it's not, it didn't exclude anything. And with Muji, it is obvious that he's not a therapist and he doesn't claim to do therapy and he doesn't want to do therapy. In fact, it's becoming more and more clear when he talks to people, the stories of the people don't interest him. He wants just to guide the being to his real nature, his true nature, and that's it. That doesn't exclude, though, that when people have emotional stuff coming up, that they need support and that they need maybe therapy or they need some counseling or some guidance. And in fact, they have a team in Monte Sahaja where he lives, where people help people that kind of freak out or whatever, where it's difficult, so that they can talk to somebody. I didn't meet any of them, so I don't know if these people are therapists or if they are just kind of guided by Muji how to be. But for me, any type of presence, being with somebody who is in a emotional or in a difficult state, for me is therapeutical. So in a way, this part is covered, because it's an important part on the spiritual journey too, because all these emotions will come up at a certain moment.
So, it's often a criticism that I hear about Muji in particular, because he is so very clear about what he's wanting to talk about and what he's wanting to take seriously and what he doesn't. So it's often a criticism that's voiced, that he's kind of really doing people a disservice in just stressing absolute truth, because the other realities, emotional realities, physical realities, somehow seem to not be included. That there's a sense of all of this being there, but somehow not worthy of taking all that seriously when you're looking for spiritual truth.
I think it is a lot of interpretation depending on whoever is there. When I come with my perspective, or you see with your perspective, or anybody else, everybody carries his own way of seeing. So there's always an interpretation about what does he do with it, what does it mean. And what I feel about it is that he's just clear about that his role is not a therapist role. He's a guru, he's a teacher, he's somebody who points us to the truth. And if that's what you're there for, then he's there for that. If that's not what you're there for, if you want emotional healing, you're not in the right place. And then you need to find some other person, some other teacher, some other therapist, counselor, or whatever you need to work on this stuff. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but what I find interesting when he said, once you awaken, this awaken from the dream that we are dreaming, like like as if you're waking up from the night, and in the night you have a dream that lions are chasing you, and when you wake up you don't need to run away because there are no real lions chasing you. So from his point of view, and I think because probably also he is not somebody who needed therapy in his life, from his point of view it's just clear. I mean, once you wake up to the real, whatever it means, I'm sorry, I can't really say because I am not yet in that state, or at least I didn't incorporate it totally or whatever. It is not necessary to deal with all these emotional problems and all these, because they're just seen as a dream. And then automatically something is taking over to deal with these things once when they come up. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel sad or that you're not touched by anything. It just means that whenever the moment comes, it will be dealt with.
Mhm.
You're looking a little bit like, I don't know, like a skeptical, or what is it?
Well, as you know, Sujati, these days I'm mostly working with people who are on a spiritual journey and who have found that, and I'm working with um, basically 2, possibly 3 people who were with Muji. So, and they found that they needed support for their emotional healing.
I'm sure lots of people
With,
do.
of course, with somebody who has that non-dual understanding, spiritual understanding as a background. So that does make the therapeutic and emotional work slightly different from what it would be in regular therapy. That's totally personality based, right? But that need is still there and can still be there, even though actually people have really seen the truth of their being. It's really solid in them, and yet, what I find, these emotional knots and contractions can be so severe that they really do need professional help. And,
Yeah.
they need more than just the awareness that arises about them in the moment. So that's my background and my experience. So, and it's not the first time we have this discussion, but it's good to have it in public because, I think a lot of people do have those questions and these concerns. So I do feel it's good to actually voice it in public also, to have this discussion publicly.
I totally agree with you in the point that even if you got a glimpse of what your true nature is, that if there's not a real settling into that all these emotions and stuff, lots of people have traumatism, so all these trauma or whatever difficult situations, say, as I said, they will come up. So it's like a big cleaning operation. And it's very helpful to have somebody there to listen, to guide. And as again, I go back to Muji. He's not a therapist, and it's really not his specialty. And I don't, my sense is that he didn't go through a lot of trauma, so how should he know about that? And
Yes.
that's fine, and it's totally fine. It's not that what he's doing. And then at the same time, it does need sometimes people who can help others with this, and that's where you come in, or I come in also. And for some people, there are different levels on which we need help also.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, if you're doing your taxes, you don't call your psychotherapist to do the taxes for you. You call your accountant. Or when you want to have your car fixed, you won't go to your butcher and ask him to fix the car. It's everybody does the thing that they can do. Huh?
Okay, so why don't let's hear from you, maybe what you feel you were looking for in Osho and what you found with him, and then also what you were looking for in Muji and what you found being with him.
Mm-hmm. When I found Osho, I was seeking, but I didn't know what I was seeking. I just read his books, I did the meditations, and I was just so blown away that finally somebody is saying exactly what I feel. I was just like, this is incredible. I want to see this person. I was just like enthusiastic, because all these other books, they were from people who were a long time dead or who were very mindy or what, and it really spoke to my heart. So I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew that I was looking for something. And when this talked to me and resonated in me, then it was clear that I needed to go and see what it was. And what was your question and what I got from it?
What did you find?
What did I find? I found that I was loved with Osho. It was really this experience of that, even though I felt like a broken outsider, I found that I was loved as I was, that I didn't need to change anything, that I didn't need to do anything. I am just fine as I am. And that was really, really huge. So, but I didn't understand much about the spiritual path at that moment. I was listening, but I can't say that it registered much. And that's why I say, I mean, the 20 years, 30 years later, when I met Muji, or almost 30 years later, that I found it very superficial, yeah, but because I couldn't hear it at that moment. I just couldn't understand it yet. So it took
I
some
think
time.
I think it's so typical that when people start looking, they haven't a clue what they're actually looking for. They just know they're looking for something.
There must be something else than that.
Yes. and it kind of clarifies itself along the way.
Yeah.
So let's get to Muji.
And then when I was finding Muji, I actually stopped searching, even though Osho had said, once I leave my body, get a living master. And I did look around, and I met a few people, and they also helped me, but it didn't really click so much. And so when I finally saw Muji on YouTube, and something was like really intrigued, and then I heard a few phrases, and they just got inside me, and I was like, whoa, this is so interesting. This is, wow. I was really blown away by the depths, by the angle of how he would say things. So it was really a different, very different catch on than what I had with Osho. Osho was directly talking to my heart. It was just like, oh, this, and this Muji, it was like more, wow, so interesting, wow, so deep, so beautiful. So even though Muji is, I would say, is probably the less intellectual from the both, like Osho and Muji, but it reached me in a different way. And what I got out of that, I'd say, now that I listen since years to Muji's teachings and pointings, it's really very, very straightforward, into depth, and one pointed. Like Osho had all these different paths. You can come from here, you can come from there. Muji's like, here is my way. and I'm following the pointing, and I feel that I did understand a lot more than I did years ago when I started to follow his pointings. And at the same time, I do know that something hasn't been really landed or incorporated, or whatever you want to call it. Incorporate is not a good word. It's that it's really grounded in me. That I don't feel it is even though I listen and I'm like, I can answer the questions, and I see these people that they really, really get it, even though there's nothing to get. And so, something inside is like not reached by that. So I'm just opening up to, at a certain moment, and I like how Osho put it, you're gonna wake up in a certain, one day you're gonna wake up. Maybe it's Monday. If it's not Monday, it's Tuesday or Wednesday. So you get the drift. And so if it's not today, maybe it's tomorrow. I'm ready today, but maybe it's not today. So there's something about patience, and there's something about opening up to grace, to your name is Grace. I'm opening up to grace. Yeah.
Well, what I hear from you, Sujati, and I'm really touched by that, is that it really takes a certain humility to just be able to say, to have the truthfulness about oneself, to know that, some things are, some experiences are there, but somehow it's not quite, it's like you haven't quite reached that fullness of knowing, and it's so easy to, and the internet is full of people who kind of, express these truths, and you have the distinct feeling that it's just a mental, it's just an intellectual knowing. It's not really transformed them in the way that it does when it's really known. So I feel it's really important also to have the humility to say, well, look, I'm just on this journey, and I'll surrender what it's going to be like, and maybe awakening is not going to happen in one instant. Maybe it'll just sneak up on you.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So what have you found with Muji?
What I have found is that I know that there is this space, this what Muji calls isness, this being, and I do know that this is unchanging, always there, and at the same time I don't know it. I know it and I don't know it. So, but that's much better than it was like a few years ago. I didn't know that it was there at that moment. So now at least I know it's there. It's here.
How do you know that?
I know it because I did the invitation, I followed the pointings, and it leads me to this. And at the same time, there is something that does not want to be here, does not want to really just let it go, all this other stuff. I think there's some attachment still to my stories, or to my identity, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. So would you say you have a sense of this being, this isness?
Yeah.
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 So what is missing?
Nothing is missing. Nothing is missing, and still something is missing. I can't really say. It is something about, and it's really funny because yesterday I listened to one of the Rishikesh satsangs where a woman was exactly saying the same thing. And I'm going to re-listen to this one because she was expressing that. She said, I listen to you, I get it, and somehow it's not really this. I know that it's not really this. So Muji says the same thing. So what's missing? So what's missing? I don't know what's missing. I just know that this is not, and you know why I know that this is not yet really there? Because I get thrown so much by all kind of little stupid things. And from my understanding, if I was really settled in this, if now the I disappears, obviously, if I wasn't I anymore and it was just the isness, then these things that would happen, and I could just let them happen and let them go and understand and learn from them.
Mhm.
Right now, it doesn't seem to be like that. It seems more like these things happen and it's like, paf, another one in the face, and then another one, and like, oh, and even though I do see it, I'm still very identified with this kind of movements. So for my understanding is when I'm settled in the true being, true isness, true reality, whatever you call it, then there's something, well, I describe it that it is happening. So in a way, I know that I am this one that is watching all this happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also this, as Muchi says, are you in front of the camera or are you in, behind the camera? And then like I'm both still.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not beyond it. I'm not the space in which it is happening. I'm behind and in front, and I'm looking and I'm observing, and I'm identified with all the drama that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I know that this is happening all in the space, and still, it's not my primary focus, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the shift that is going to happen when once one is awake, that the obviousness of this space in which it is happening, that awareness of all this is really me, or I am this, or no more I, just this.
You know, I find it so interesting because in my experience, um, it's actually very subtle. You know, the mind has criteria for when you're truly awakened. You know, and one of them you just mentioned. It's like if I were truly awakened, then I wouldn't be so caught in emotional states or emotional reactions, right? Um, and you know, for me, it's just like, well, reality is all of this, all of these expressions. You know, it's like just because I know who I am doesn't mean I can't get caught in some emotional reaction. I do. I do. And, you know, that's included in my expression of this beingness. So to me, it's like none of these criteria that the mind comes up with is ultimately truthful, because you don't know what the expression of this being is in you other than by just finding it out moment to moment. And you know, if it still gets caught in emotions, then it still gets caught in emotions, you know. um, if it has an alcohol problem, like Trungpa Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa did, it has an alcohol problem. Does this mean he's not awake? I don't think so. You see, but if you make that into a criterion, like any awake master cannot have an issue with drugs, then well, then if you have an issue with drugs, then you can't be awakened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, part of the settling, my understanding is part of the settling into the truth actually means letting go of these criteria that the mind comes up with as to how this truth would express in you.
Yeah.
Because that's what takes you away from that, Because you take that as proof that you're not awake yet.
So are you trying to convince me that I'm awake?
I'm just throwing this out.
Well, I do get your point, and I don't think that Muji ever talked about that like this either. What I'm hearing from him is you don't need to be squeaky clean, like all therapized over and everything is finished to be awake.
Yes.
And he even often tells the story, like if there was a master who was sleeping 23 hours and 50 minutes each day and would wake up, would smoke a cigarette, go for a pee, and just look in your eyes, and he would go to sleep, would that be still awakened? Could still be an awakened being. So it's really not about this. So I hear you, it's totally true. And at the same time, that I mean, from all the people that I listened to from awakening and stuff, there were certain points in which they knew that something has shifted. And this is not the case here in my being. So, well, I did hear also from some other teachers, like it can be a gradual awakening to the truth. And hopefully that's my case. I do hope so, because I do wish to wake up to the reality of my true being. Yeah.
So, and like I said, it's also important to have the humility to say, look, I don't feel I'm quite there. It's like I'm not settled in this truth. It just doesn't feel quite like that. Then that's important to just be truthful about that.
Well, I don't know if it's true and if it's not true. As all these masters also say, the Buddha nature is already there, and they see us in our true potential and true being, and all this mind stuff and all the stories, all this exists with it, but it's not our true nature.
Yes.
So I am already awake, and I don't feel it.
Yes. Yes.
And feelings come and go, so this is also not reliable.
And
so
thoughts come and go too.
Exactly. So
criteria come and go.
Yeah, definitely. With every culture and every century are different criteria too. I mean, in Catholic, it's about the celibacy. Also, in some monks of Hindu or whatever, it's about not having sex. I mean, I don't think that's a criteria, but I come from a different culture, so different background. Huh?
Yeah. So I'd like to just touch on also how you experience your emotional healing journey. connecting with your spiritual journey? Or not connecting, or being kind of in parallel? How do you see that?
Yeah. So I'd say my emotional healing was next to my spiritual quest, always the most important. My emotional, physical, but more emotional was the most important point next to the spiritual one.
Mm-hmm.
So I always looked for all kind of ways how to be emotionally grounded, feel better, and definitely the sense of being loved and being accepted exactly as I am from Osho did a whole lot good for that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the fact that he left his body shortly afterwards kind of threw me off there. I didn't have this person anymore in his physical body to feel that. So
Mm-hmm.
it didn't stay somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And the older feeling or the older story of kind of being abandoned in the universe and whatever kind of got came slightly back, even though I know it's just bullshit. But what to do? It's sometimes these kind of old things, they just creep up on you. Huh?
Mm.
So depending on my path, there were so many different things happening uh, that I sometimes really feel the connection of, yeah, I definitely am loved. I am connected. I cannot be otherwise. I mean, if I'm here on this earth, how should it be otherwise? The feeling though of it is not always there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with Muji, I can say that with Muji that the emotional healing has shifted a lot. I do know that I spiritually I have grown a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but the emotional healing that's maybe because of that's what we talked about, that he's not a therapist or that he's not even going and allowing really for this space when he's with people. It's kind of okay, I just have to do something for that on the side,
Mm-hmm.
parallel to my spiritual path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So right now you don't feel they kind of support each other. They're just kind of parallel realities, as it were.
Yeah, in a way, that would be I since I had this question from you before and I was reading it, I'm like, I don't know how to answer that, and
Mm-hmm.
that I just trusted that the answer will come while talking to you, and yeah, it is really like that.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel it's there's this and there's that, and they they do. They do go together in some way, because when I'm more emotionally stable or solid or feel more stable, then it's so much easier to allow the spiritual thing to deepen also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say it helps to allow the emotional states and to work with them, because if it's a little bit like when you're hungry, you don't care about opera and about the culture or arts,
Mm-hmm.
or when you're cold, you're gonna burn the Buddha statue because you're cold.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're emotionally totally feeling overwhelmed and really not good, it's very hard to say, the spiritual path is really important,
Mm-hmm.
because all is there. It's just this.
And yet, that's often the state in which people reach for spiritual teachings, because, the listening to a spiritual teacher can have a very calming effect on the emotions. kind of indirectly, because you're listening to a being who who is very settled and calm and peaceful, and that
Mhm.
kind of transmits itself.
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can really feel this peace and you aspire to this peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is like a drawing towards this. And no, because at this point where I am or where other people on the path are, this drawing brings up, as I said before, it brings up all the old stuff also.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if this is not dealt with on an emotional side, it's just gonna explode in your face somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a real turning point also. And I did hear stories like that where incredible emotional pain brought people to shift this, to somehow transform this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always a fact. And I do think, my sense is that it is very good to deal with the emotional stuff at the same time also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But who am I to say?
Mm. Well, you can really only follow what calls you in your life. And if it's both the spiritual deepening and the emotional healing, then that's what you follow. And you trust that somehow both are needed because both present themselves.
Well, and we are in this body with these emotions, and that's why I work with the body and the emotions and the spiritual, because
Mm-hmm.
they are all interconnected somehow.
Yes.
So, and I find it really, really important to include all these three aspects. Even if I wake up to my true being, I'm still in this body here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna float somewhere outside and say, "Oh, today I'm gonna choose your body." I, this body is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow, for me, it's important to take care of this body too in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that the main focus should be on the body, or it doesn't mean that the main focus is on the emotions. And it is still important for me, in my understanding, to include them in that.
Mm. Yeah.
And I hear other people talking about it completely differently. So that's why I'm saying, I don't know. I really don't know. It's just really my personal opinion. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's more than a personal opinion. It's also just embracing somehow what's put on your path. Like you say with Muji, I mean, it's obvious that he hasn't had the need for therapy. It was never on his path. So it's not something that he was dealing with himself. But for others, it clearly is on their path because there is a lot of emotional pain or trauma or
Yeah.
whatever it is, a particular emotion that's particularly troubling, whether it's fear or whether it's anger or so it's like or need to be loved, whatever it is. It's like when that's somehow part of your path, you know it because you know yourself enough to know how deeply that's kind of embedded in your life. And so sooner or later, it's like you have to kind of deal with this, and what's dangerous and seductive at the same time, and it's dangerous because it is so seductive, is the idea that if you follow a spiritual path and you wake up, then all the emotional stuff will somehow fall away, or won't bother you anymore, or and that's what turns out to be, well, let's say highly unlikely to happen. Because for most people, when there is emotional issues that need healing, the awakening doesn't actually take care of those. So, they may have to take care of them after or before or during, who knows? But somehow it's like, they seem to call people anyway.
I can't say. I don't know. I just think of this story about the dream, no, waking up from the dream and seeing that it's not real. So the dream is still there. But once you know that it is not real, will it affect you in the same way?
I don't know. My sense is this is really a problem with language, because the unreality that's talked about in this it's a different one than the one of dreams that we have at night. And we want to believe, or people want to believe, that the unreality of emotions is exactly like that of dreams at night. And that's in my experience just not true. It's a different kind of reality. Just as the body is a different kind of reality. Just because people wake up, most of them still eat and drink and sleep. And so most of them will also still take care of their emotions somehow, because, they live in a body and emotions arise in this physical existence. And there's a few beings who live without eating. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote about that in his book. And some people really are able to do that, but most people, awakened or not awakened, still eat and drink and sleep. So it's like, those realities, they're different than dream realities. They're different types of realities, but they're not totally unreal. That's not my understanding of them. It's a nice thought, though.
I can't say anything about that. I just know that in my experience right now, I know that I need to take care of my emotional reality, of my physical and my spiritual, for my well-being. So, yeah. But I don't know. Who knows when I really get it?
Well, then we can have another interview.
Yes. Certainly, with pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Sujati.
You're so welcome.
It's been really, in those interviews, I really want to talk to people at a very ground level of experience and understanding that comes from that experience. And I really feel, what I hear from you is very grounded and very, very, the word that comes is humble. Keeps coming, I don't know why. It's very humbly just owning where you're at in your journey,
It is very encouraging for me to hear that, because one of the things that I certainly never identified with was being humble. So I really, really like that one. It's a new one. Put it on my list of qualities.
Yeah. Well, let's see how that goes.
It's so not important, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cute.
Mm.
Mm.
So anyway, thank you, Sujati. And I just want to say, for anybody who feels drawn to working with Sujati, I know you work on Skype also. Your website is sujati.com. And yeah, well, thank you again. And just to mention that there'll be more videos coming out in the series of Seekers and Finders. And if you feel you want to share your story, you can contact me through my website, living-from-love.com. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person I have an interview with.
Well,
So,
thank you so much, Grace. It was a real pleasure talking with you and talking about all these things that are so essential for me and for you, I think also. So that is
yes.
very touching and very beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sujati. And bye.
Bye.